Empires. These titles are often your ultimate goal in CK3, currently being the highest tier title a player can form, until they add China that is. But what empires should you try to form? Which are the strongest? Which are the best? To answer this, I've made a top 10 list. I'll mainly be ranking empires by the unique gameplay mechanics associated with each of them. Now you might be thinking that's a bit unfair, as some empires are absolutely chock full of special content and modifiers, like Byzantium, whereas others have barely any truly unique features, like Britannia. What I mean to do is rank each empire based on its associated context. Are the cultures within its borders good for metagaming? Do faiths have holy sites within its borders? How many special buildings are there? And is the government type it starts off with strong? With these criteria in mind, let's take a look at the top 10 best empires, starting off with Italia at number 10. In terms of having special buildings, Italia is amazing, having an obscene density of them, especially universities. In particular, it's got one of my absolute favorite buildings, the Duomo of Florence. In terms of its two primary cultures, Italian and Cisalpine both are pretty good. Italian has Republican legacy and formation fighting experts, both very good traits, and the County of Rome, which begins with one of the highest levels of development on the map, is also Italian, so that's giving a bonus to the Italian cultural fascination speed. Cisalpine is similar to Italian, except it has more bonuses to making money and less to fighting. Also, no Rome. In terms of holy sites, the Vatican is of course a holy site, but you'll have a pretty hard time wresting that away from the Pope. Now with all these good bonuses, you might be thinking, why is Italia at number 10? Well, the answer is because most of the time it's not an empire that you'll ever sort of want to form. The reason being that once you have the Kingdom of Italy, you'll be pretty good from there, and might want to opt to either join Byzantium or the HRE in order to take them over. Because after you've united the Italian peninsula, you're pretty limited in what you can do, whereas if you take over the HRE or Byzantium, you can then go on to form Rome and get some unique bonuses. For this reason, despite Italia being generally pretty good, I consider it only a stepping stone empire, and thus it is at number 10. Moving on to number 9, we go to Scandinavia. Scandinavia is the Viking empire of choice. Incredibly strong in 867, less useful in 1066, and not worth it in 1178. Being possessed of 90 de jure counties, this empire becomes more difficult to form the later the era it is. This is because as the game progresses, more of Scandinavia will begin to convert to Christianity. If you're a Catholic trying to unite Scandinavia, you'll find it quite difficult to conquer other Catholic kingdoms outright. And if you're a Satru, you'll also find a hard time conquering all these kingdoms, as you'll find that they join each other to help defend against holy wars. The easiest way to unite Scandinavia is to start in 867 and then, as a Viking, conquer all the other tribal rulers of Scandinavia, which is a lot easier than it seems. As with the warmonger tenet, a state of total war is very feasible. The reason Scandinavia is worth conquering is because such a large de jure empire with two Asatru holy sites and many kingdoms can be developed by the player into a force strong enough to rival the HRE. In terms of min-maxing, the Norse culture combined with the Asatru faith is one of the best combinations in the entire game. But of course, being possessed of such a heretical faith, you'll be unable to sort of integrate into the HRE and take it over from the inside, as everyone will hate you. Thus, you'll need to make your own empire. The one thing you'll have to watch out for when making Scandinavia, though, is to catch up on development, as if you're not good on building buildings and don't convert to feudalism or to administrative, then the Christian lords to the south will eventually overwhelm you. Moving on to number 8, we have an empire with a very special function, Ajuraan. The first thing you'll notice when taking a look at Ajuraan is that it's very teeny tiny, at only 18 counties, and that's a good thing. Ajuraan is the smallest de jure empire in the entire game, and it's the cheapest empire to form because of this. If you've ever been in a situation where you've got this massive big pile of kingdoms and counties, but are worried that it's all going to be destroyed in Confederate partition, Ajuraan is here to save you. Aside from its utility of just being the easiest to form empire in the game, Ajuraan is also pretty good because its local faith, Wackism, has a dense cluster of holy sites. While only one is in the empire proper, the other 4 are pretty close by. In terms of the cultures within this empire, Somali has dryland dwellers and war camels, which are pretty good for this area of course. Moving on to number 7, we have the Empire of Britannia. Britannia has 3 holy sites for the insular Irish faith, as well as a fair distribution of special buildings. In particular, Stonehenge is very unique in that it offers a discount to faith conversion. Britannia is possessed of many strong cultures, particularly English because of the bureaucratic ethos, longbow competitions, and Wittenagers hegemon, and the empire is much easier to form than nearby Francia, which will often be grappling with the HRE for control of key territories. In terms of making an empire in Western Europe, it's also much easier than trying to unite Hispania. Because of the Iberian struggle, this can be very difficult, with peace only being possible at certain distinct intervals. At number 6, we move on to India and the Deccan Empire, the easiest to form of India's 3 massive empires. This empire is absolutely full of special buildings, as well as some points of very high development. In terms of cultures, the Tamil culture is particularly good for making lots of money, especially because of the seafarers trait, and the Kannada culture seems great for conquest because of the Garuda warriors trait and the Stoic ethos. If embarking on a campaign to unite all of India, the Deccan Empire is a pretty good place to start. Moving on to our number 5 spot, we have Arabia. Arabia is a very large empire standing at 94 counties. It has many Muslim holy sites, particularly 4 Ash'ari holy sites. It starts off with points of high development in Egypt and near Mecca, and it's got a great abundance of special buildings. As you may already know, Egypt is one of the best kingdoms of the game, and Egypt is a part of Arabia. The Bedouin culture is great for moving around quickly in the desert and conquering things, and the Egyptian culture is great for turning floodplains into super high development areas. Having the Egyptian floodplains within its borders and also being able to conquer the floodplains of Baghdad pretty easily, this empire has the potential to have 2 really high development areas within its borders. Due to this incredible terrain, I'd argue that Arabia just has a better potential than most of the empires I've discussed thus far. Continuing to number 4, we go to the Holy Roman Empire. Possessed of many strong duchies such as Austria and Bohemia, the HRE is an empire that can easily snowball to encompassing most of Europe. In 1066 and 1178, the empire just starts off so massive that it can absolutely steamroll many of its weaker neighbors, and it's not as if reforming the empire in 867 is pointless either. This is because if you hold the HRE title, you will have the decision available to restore the Roman Empire if you conquer key provinces. For several reasons that I'll mention later, it's always weaker when you do this as the HRE rather than Byzantium. But the fact that you can do it at all is pretty good, as when you create the Roman Empire, it de jure drifts all your previously held empire titles into this new Roman Empire title. And if you're the HRE, you get this cool red HRE symbol, so that's nice. The one thing that you've got to worry about when playing as this empire is succession. Princely elective is a rather dangerous succession type. Whereas with other methods such as high partition, you may lose a bunch of titles, but you know that your main title will be going to someone of your dynasty. Not so with the electors, as things could easily take a turn for the worse as they boot your dynasty out of power and elect someone new. To counteract this, try to collect all the elector titles and make sure that they're held by members of your dynasty. In addition to this, be wary of the many revolts that might happen, particularly for independence or other claimants. Unless you've unlocked the full legitimacy dynastic legacy, it's likely that every time you die and your heir takes over, you'll be faced with big civil wars. At number 3, we have the Persian Empire, standing at 114 counties. In terms of building up development, the Persian culture is absolutely amazing. Garden Architects allows them to appoint the Garden Architect Court position, incredible for boosting development. Irrigation Experts gives additional boosts to development. Beacon of Learning gives plus 20% learning experience and allows you to appoint a court scholar who also boosts cultural fascination progress. Water Rituals makes you less likely to get infected by plagues, makes the diligent trait more common, and adds an additional plus 10% learning experience. You've also got Enlightened Magnates, which gives you access to the Deccan tax jurisdiction decision. This is a tax jurisdiction that is just flatly better than the basic one, no downsides. The Persian culture is just absolutely insane, and without a doubt one of the best, perhaps the best culture in the entire game. At least if you care about development, that is. In addition to all this, the Persian Empire itself is absolutely swimming in special buildings, and as mentioned previously, has Baghdad, one of the best duchies in the game. With Byzantium being its only major threat, you'll typically have free reign to expand Persia in whatever direction you like. It is undoubtedly one of the strongest empires. Moving on to our number 2 spot, we have a bit of a strange empire. Great Liao. Now you may be thinking, what's so special about this empire? It's a low development empire in the middle of nowhere, just a bunch of nomadic things going on here? Well, I choose number 2 as it's the easiest to form of the major nomad empires. Ever since the release of the Cons of the Steppe DLC, the new nomad government has been absolutely incredibly strong. Some might even say overpowered, as it is feasible to do a world conquest of the entire world with a single character because of the nomads. There's nothing particularly strong about the empire title itself, except that there are two cultures within it that have the Wolves of the Deep Steppe cultural trait, those being the Karaite and Mongol cultures. As a nomad leader, however, you can use Great Liao as a stepping stone to take the Become the Greatest of Khans decision, an absolutely insane decision that grants you a ton of bonuses such as the Khan's Onslaught, Casus Belli, thousands of special soldiers, an amazing trait that you pass down in your family that gives you plus 200 vassal limit, and the Greatest of Khans trait, which essentially lets you just steamroll the entire world. Because of the absolute insanity of nomad mechanics, it would be quite dishonest of me to make a best empires video and not include a single nomad empire. Thus I chose Great Liao because of its easiness to form, though this nomad ascendancy functions with any of the empires of the Great Steppe. Lastly, moving on to our number one spot, we go to Byzantium. Similar to how the Khans of the Steppe DLC made nomads absolutely insane, the Roads to Power DLC, which focused on Byzantium, has made the empire absolutely busted if the player knows how to use it. Instead of just controlling one personal army like in feudal realms, Byzantine governors man what are called themes, and have thematic armies that they use, in addition to their private retinues. A special feature the Byzantine emperor has access to is to take control of his governor's thematic armies if he spends enough influence to do so. This means that if the player sets things up properly, they could leverage the entire military strength of them and all their vassals, something basically no other government can do. But that is simply the first layer of the massive cake that is Byzantium. Administrative governments have access to a family domicile, a special building that exists independently of any titles that you can upgrade and that can produce you large amounts of money. This, coupled with Greece's many special buildings and the extremely high development level of Constantinople, means that the Byzantine emperor can get obscenely rich. Not even to mention the fact that the Orthodox religion has communion, which means you continually ask the head of the faith for gold. The Greek culture has the bureaucratic ethos, which is arguably the best one, as well as imperial tagmata and religious patronage. Imperial tagmata adds all the special unique Greek men-at-arms, which are basically just improvements over the baseline men-at-arms, whereas religious patronage gives you an insane 1500 piety for completing a temple holding as well as renown, and an additional 25% piety from buildings. But wait, it doesn't even end there. Acclamation succession is basically just a better form of primogeniture. That may seem crazy, but past a certain point of owning the Byzantine Empire, you're basically never going to be contested for the throne again, as you just have too much influence. That is, if you've done the correct things and gone down the Byzantine dynasty legacy, that is. And with that influence, you can basically choose whatever family member or child that you want to be the next emperor. Unlike primogeniture, where you're locked into your oldest child, here you can choose just the best one and have them inherit all the titles that you currently hold. Not only that, but you can have this type of government in 867. It's the default. But wait, there's more. The Byzantine Empire gives you access to a ton of unique decisions that give you bonus modifiers. You can prepare Greek fire to burn any ships that go too near Constantinople. You've got a button that will convert nearby rulers to orthodoxy. You can re-establish a special university in the capital, can re-establish a special grain dole that makes an influence boosting activity cheaper. You can hold a triumph, which gives you a ton of unique modifiers depending on what you select. And whenever you reconquer an old Roman territory, you get a special modifier for doing so. As mentioned when discussing the HRE, you can reform Rome as Byzantium, and it'll basically always be better than doing so as the HRE, as you'll get a ton of different bonuses as you're progressing through your conquests. With so much unique content and powerful decisions, Byzantium is undoubtedly the strongest empire in the game when held in the player's hands.